doesn't sound like the Ken Cale music, does it?
No, it doesn't.
That sounds like
different.
The bouncy Coach Carol Phillips music here on the Pulse. I like that. I like it better than the Ken Cale music, actually.
Hi, Ken. You know? I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a long time,
It's been
Carol.
too long.
It's been a long time.
Feels good to be back.
Weeks and weeks have gone by. But I know you've been busy.
I have.
And had some great events that have been going on in your life, so that's a good thing.
Right, yep. Last time I was here, I was talking about the Spear Memorial Hospital Wine, Women, and Wisdom event. And I went up there to the Common Man in Plymouth, and it was amazing. They had almost 200 people there. Just really good time. Nice, relaxing evening.
And not only that, but everybody who went got a free copy of your book.
They did. That was fun. So I did a book signing, and we had a free copy for every person who came to the event.
People are putting those books on eBay right now, trying to make some fast cash.
Fast cash.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm glad it went well, and I know it was very successful, and you've had other events as well, and more to come.
Yes.
More to come.
Very busy. Busy is a good thing.
One busy lady. That is for sure. So, speaking of busy ladies and busy times, why don't you introduce our guest today?
Absolutely. I am excited to welcome Paula Whittier. She's the Sales and Marketing Director for the Arbors in Bedford, which is a memory care assisted living facility for people with Alzheimer's and other memory impairments. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here.
So
Great
glad
to have you.
Tell us a little bit about what you do for the Arbors and how they help people with memory impairments.
Sure. The Arbors was built for a gentleman's mother in 1998, and it's been specialized memory care ever since, so almost 18 years, or a little over 18 years now. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director, and I hate that title only because I really look at myself as a community resource. So even if you're not looking for specific memory care, eventually you might be. So it's a good idea really to talk to everybody and to help them through this journey. It's a really difficult journey to start out. You feel like you're the only one. Always there to help 24/7, actually. You can even text me in the middle of the night and I'll help you. So it's really, so I think of myself as really a friend. I have a job to do, and I definitely take care of that at the Arbors, but I'm always available to anybody. I really feel like it's my calling to help people find appropriate care for their senior loved ones.
And it is an area that's so prevalent, and people are struggling trying to take care of elderly parents who, they suddenly have memory problems, which affects every single part of their lives. So can you talk about that, about how fast that population is growing?
It's growing very quickly, actually. I just read a fact that we, in senior living, we're putting up 60,000 beds a day until 2025. So that's an awful lot of memory care needed. People don't build communities without knowing that they're needed because they're businessmen. So there's a great need for memory care. I find that families, a lot of times, once they get through their denial and they start the process, it takes a very, very long time for them to get their loved one placed into a community. They don't know where to go or where to turn, and sometimes it's too late. So they'll use home care maybe for a little while and have to jump into a community, and then they'll miss all that programming. You have to remember that in these communities, we have just top-notch programming. So it's not like mom's just sitting at home in a corner looking out a window. We have every single thing to entertain, and we have something called the 4 Pillars at the Arbors, which is amazing. But everybody has something to offer to keep them stimulated and feeling like they're in life still. But I would say that people start a little bit too late. Placing their loved ones. I always wonder why people don't place their loved ones and then at end of life take them back home and take care of them. But I would do it in reverse.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure people feel overwhelmed because at that point it's just like, okay, how am I going to take care of them?
Oh, they're so
24/7.
It's how am I going to take care of them? How am I going to keep my job? How am I going to take care of my children? How am I going to take care of my husband's parents? Because that can happen too, where you get both sets of parents. Where am I going to get the money? I don't understand the veterans benefits, or I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be eligible for Medicaid. We have a Medicaid bed shortage in New Hampshire. There's only so many beds to go around. and it's very difficult. You have to get your information. You have to be brave, and you have to find somebody that will listen, and that's me. Or there are a few people like me that will just do everything they can to help you. I usually say, call me back. If you hit a wall, call me back. But it's very difficult. But you have to be proactive. You have to be brave. It's really hard. You feel like you're all alone. So we run a support group and a book group. Lots of people do that. Look for other people to reach out to, but don't sink yourself into that world either. You don't want too much. You want to be able to get the help that you need and the information, but you also want to enjoy the little moments that you have, because you'll be very busy, especially if you're a sandwich and you have the kids and the seniors.
Right. The sandwich generation,
Yep.
meaning
And
you're
you have
still
a
raising
spouse.
children.
Everybody forgets about their spouse or their loved one, their partner, and that's. You have to stay strong to be able to get through it.
Right. So people find themselves still raising their kids, and all of a sudden their parents are having health problems or memory problems, and they're having to help them. And like you said, hold down a full-time job.
Yep.
So I'm familiar with the whole process because my mother has Alzheimer's. But for people who are just starting the process or haven't dealt with this at all, can we back up a little bit and talk about some of the warning signs that people see with their parents and how important it is? Because whether it's denial or the parents' pride, a lot of times they try to cover up the fact that they're having memory problems, or it's just their way of trying to cope and trying to make up for what's now lacking. And sometimes the children will be like, well, everybody's forgetful. I do that too.
I call that denial.
Yeah. The difference is we might do it once a week or once a month, where they're doing it several times a day, and it's interrupting their quality of life. And the other thing I tell people is listen to your gut. If your gut is telling you that something's wrong, then listen to it.
Something's wrong.
So can you go over some of the things people might
Like some of the
look out
first
for?
signs that they might look out for?
Right.
I think that when you go and you visit your loved one at home, to say they're still at home, if there's a couple, if it's the mom and the dad that are still at home, usually one will cover for the other. So sometimes both of them have memory impairment, but usually it's one, and the husband will cover for that wife. Nobody wants anybody to be made a fool of, and they don't want their children, because they're the leaders of their children's world. They don't want them to see that there's a problem. When one of them has a fall and goes into the hospital, or God forbid passes away, if the memory impaired one is left, that's when you start to really see your signs. Mom doesn't clean the house the same way that she used to. There are bills that are coming in the colored envelopes. Maybe there are sticky notes everywhere. So there are signs. Some children choose to ignore it. So if you have a group of children, family order is really interesting when it comes to this. The oldest daughter will start to pick up on it and want to do something. The youngest son is helpless. And I don't mean that. I mean that sincerely. Like, you feel so sorry for them, because that's their mother, and that's kind of like the queen of their world, and they don't want, and she's not so bad, but the oldest daughter, and then the middles are the middles. They're pretty sensible, but they're being torn by the side. So a lot of times we work with families, whole families will call in, or they'll conference call. It takes a long time to get them on the same page. They all have to kind of see it, but there's all kinds of things. Usually it's just in daily activity in the home. You can see things are very different.
Right.
Sticky notes are everywhere.
And they might not be eating consistently.
People will get thinner. They won't eat consistently. You might see a change in behavior just because they're not remembering to take their pills. You can set them out, but it doesn't mean that they can remember to do it. A lot of people will say, well, I call my mother and I make sure she took it. And it's like, she may be confused on the other end. And moms are really good at, and so are dads, we're all set. We've got it. They sound like they're smiling on the phone.
Exactly. Everything's
and they
fine.
have to get off the phone sooner, usually, because they just don't want to think that long anymore. So they want to get that conversation over with. I've got to go. Something's going on. And of course, a fire is always a good sign. We get people all the time that they have a cooking fire. And I'm like, unplug the stove.
Exactly. And it's hard when they're still living there alone. And the children are just there on occasion. So that, the safety issues are huge, because we dealt with those with my mom also. But also things like the food that's been in the refrigerator too long, and they think it's still fine. Then they eat it and it makes them sick.
Makes them sick,
Falling hazards. the stairs. They can't navigate as much
Yep.
anymore. The brain's not telling them how to walk up and down the stairs correctly.
And you're going to blame yourself for everything that happens anyway. So you make the best decision you can for your parent, but the best decision really is to educate yourself as quickly as you can, have all your resources in front of you, and then, talk to your siblings and push a little bit, because their accidents happen. And then who's to say that that just wasn't supposed to happen at that time, if you want to go into that whole realm of things. But, keeping people safe, you have to remember, too, communities have respite. You don't have to place somebody just forever. You can say, you know what, I need a break. I got to get this house cleaned up. I got to see exactly where we're at. I need to make an appointment with the neurologist. I want to talk to a geriatric care manager. So you can get your stuff together without worrying by using the respite time.
Right, and that's one thing I find is a lot of people don't realize all the resources that are out there, in-home caregivers.
Even if you don't have money, you can get respite through the state through a CFI program. So it's a Medicaid program, and you get 20 days a year as a caregiver. So if you're the primary caregiver, you get 20 days for your loved one to stay somewhere.
That's
A lot
great.
of people don't know that.
That's great. And then the other thing is, most of the time, their doctor's office will have a social worker who has all that information.
Yeah.
So you can call and make an appointment with them. The other thing is, a lot of times, the parents don't want you calling their doctor and
Right.
telling them what's going on.
Right.
But what I tell people is, go ahead and call their doctor on the side. You're not asking them to give you information because they can't, but you can call them and provide them information and say, hey, I wanted to give you a heads up. This is what I'm seeing is going on with my parents.
Right.
Often they'll go to their doctor's appointment and they'll tell the doctor everything's fine.
Right.
Because they really
And those
think everything's
doctors
fine.
only have had about 6 hours of training in Alzheimer's. When a lot of the doctors are older, and they're the doctors that are golfing with your dad, and they are not going to admit, they're also in a little bit of denial, and they also don't want to. They're covering for your mom or your dad too. They were all at the club together, and they're not going to let anybody see this. It's shameful to them. It's sad. They're afraid of that it's going to happen to them. They don't want kids just putting parents away and going through their money. So it's an interesting psychology to everything. So the doctor can't always save you, but a lot of times, yes. And a lot of times doctors will call the person that's coming into the community and say, you just need to go there for a few weeks, and you'll have medical care. We're going to oversee things. And that's kind of how we transition people. We white lie all the time. It was hard in the beginning, but we learn.
Right. And I have a friend who calls it creative conversation.
I like that. I like that. It's to
good.
preserve
That's good.
emotional security. You just
Right.
don't want people upset.
And I've had
And
people
afraid.
say to me, well, I feel guilty. I've always been taught not to lie. And now I'm supposed to start lying. How do I do that? And I said, well, you know what? If you're telling them a white lie because it's for their own good, you're not trying to deceive them or hurt them. You're not doing something dishonest. It's for their own good.
Yep.
Then that's what you have
Still
to
really
do.
hard for some people, but
Right.
it is necessary.
Great. Tell us a little bit about the Reflections program.
Reflections is our 4 pillars. So it's we have a collaboration with Harvard and Brigham and Women's, and when we collaborated with them, they kind of raised the bar even a little bit more. LCB Senior Living came in and bought from Merrimack Health, so they bought the Arbors a couple of years ago, and then they brought in all these great programs. So Harvard and Brigham and Women's collaboration is part of that, and they insisted that we have even more physical activity and social activity. So we have 4 pillars: the physical, cognitive, social, and emotional. Those are the 4 ways in our programming that we try to touch each person each day. Not in the same way. We have parallel programming. So we have a large group doing something and a small group doing something. We are respectful of people that like to be right in the middle of everything and the star of the show. And then you have the people that are observing from the background, but out of their room and really looking and taking it all in and enjoying it that way. So it's just how to keep people the best they can be every single day and feeling good like they're really involved. We have purposeful activities. So if you were a businesswoman or a businessman, you're welcome to our morning meetings. You're welcome to interview. We do have a program where we go through resumes with some of the residents, and they come to our first interviews with our LNAs and our nurses, which is really great to see how people relate to seniors, and the seniors feel really good about interviewing them. So that's just their first interview, but it's really great. So purposeful activity is important, and keeping people just top of mind. We have a lot of environmental stimulation. We use pine scent to release glutamate in the morning, so people are up and Adam, and we have a lot of yellow for the serotonin. We have a musical breath program that I couldn't even get into and tell you, but Josh Freitas, who works for our company and runs all our programming, he wrote The Dementia Concept, which is an amazing book, and that's what he's getting his neuroscience degree in. He's been to Berkeley, Harvard, and now he's at Lesley studying for that. And he's amazing. He's only 29. He's a cellist. And how music affects people. And this musical breath program, you would be amazed at what it does for sundowning. But that's a whole different,
Yeah, the
whole
music
different thing.
therapy is
It's amazing.
very important.
Very
Because
important.
it really resonates with
And
their
touch.
brains and the memory.
Touch and looking into somebody's eyes, I think, is next to music. So.
And you were talking about somebody wanting to be the center of attention. And the other thing that's really interesting with Alzheimer's and other dementias is they can have such a change in personality over what they used to be. So you kind of have to learn them all
You do.
over again.
That's such a great point.
and learn what they like, what they're enjoying
Because
in the moment.
adult children will say, "Oh, my mother will never do that." And I'm thinking, you'd be surprised. We have no idea. So
Right.
let's bring out the best in them and let them be, and know that you're going to form a different relationship with your mom or dad. They are different. So if you can kind of just open your mind and your heart to that, okay, this is who they are now, and I'm going to make the best of it every day.
Right, right. And it is very difficult because some people say, well, it's almost like I'm mourning their loss and they're still here, which is true.
It is true.
It's a very difficult emotional journey to take, but why not take it with them?
Right.
So that you can still enjoy them as much as possible while they are still here.
Yep, we have amazing families.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and we support them through a lot. I would say we do more for them. They need us right through the beginning stages just to get settled into the community and feel the community and know how to act. And do they want to be reality based or do they want to live in their world? And, they learn who they are around this new person that they love more than anything. So it's very interesting.
Very good. So for people who aren't familiar with the constant challenges of caring for somebody with memory issues, why is around-the-clock care so important?
I think because their emotions fluctuate constantly. So the chemicals in their body and their environment with Alzheimer's or dementia, they could just feel like they're going crazy at a moment's notice. They could be fine all day and then all of a sudden decline. And, sometimes you don't know if it's physical or physiological. So we have RNs 24/7 on site. And it's just in New Hampshire, we have great laws in New Hampshire. Nurses can actually nurse. So we have a lot of people that come from Rhode Island or Massachusetts because they can't do injections at assisted livings at memory cares in Massachusetts. So they send them up to us, or they can't do feeding tubes or ports or things like that. So your RNs are really important. We can do more. I mean, you can always call 911. A community can always do that, but having your nurses there to really document everything and follow somebody and follow them to the hospital and back from the hospital. We have a medical director, so it's just nice to have that, the educated medical team, so on site.
And the other thing about the Alzheimer's and dementias that some people might not know, because they might be there every day for most of the day helping the parent, but then they're not there at night. And people with Alzheimer's and dementia, their clocks change and they end up sometimes being up a lot of times during the night.
It's a wandering community
right
at night.
And they wander.
Yep.
So 70%, I read,
I don't
end
know
up
if we have
wandering.
that many in our community. We can have 87 people. We have 85 right now with us. I would say that probably 35 are up during the night, but those 35 people have to be cared for, and you have to remember they're adults. So we'll redirect them to bed one time. Maybe they don't know where their bed is, or maybe they need something and they can't quite put it into words. But we'll ask them and we'll try to help guide them. But we also don't say you have to go to bed. It's, what would you like to do? Do you want to sit with me? Would you like to watch some TV? We have special programming for everybody so they don't get scared at night. So it's always something nice and gentle. Do you want to go in the kitchen and make a sandwich with me? So it's just really entertaining them, making sure they're fulfilled. Maybe they're thirsty and they don't quite know. We have 4 neighborhoods, so we go from the very beginning right to end of life. So you have to kind of understand. Some people are nonverbal, but you can really see it in their eyes and their gestures what they need and want. Some people will get halfway into making a sandwich and feel just lost, but we'll know that and we'll say, oh, I was just going to get a butter knife out, here, you use it first, and it kind of gets them going again. So everything's under a watchful eye, but we want them to have as much independence as they can.
And you mentioned, if they're up during the night and they're scared. So the other thing that sometimes surprises families is the personality changes that include them being very fearful of certain things, paranoid, or very agitated. So if you're not familiar with the dementias and the behaviors, then sometimes people will slowly stop spending time with them because, they're getting old and cranky and they desperately need, more care.
Right.
But people are slowly going away because it's not fun to be around.
Right. Well, when you're in a community, too, you need to trust the community, because if you're there too much as a family member, you're not letting them acclimate into their new world. You're really not part of their new world. You're there to kind of watch over a little bit, and for you want to visit for your heart, but for them, they would be fine and start their whole life. Another thing about having a nurse on site is if you need a PRN, if you need something as you're really irritated and you need something right then, we can do that. We're non-pharmacological. We usually can lessen drugs when you come in, but if people need certain things, they need them. We're pretty aware of people's fears because a lot of it comes from tragedy or things that happened to them in their past. They may not know why that feeling's coming up, but we'll know because it'll be recorded. We really know each person, and we really make an effort to make sure everybody understands and does everything. We need to get ahead of behaviors and fears. So sometimes that's hard with that many people, but we make every effort to do that.
And what can family members do if their loved one is still at home and they're starting to deal with some of these issues?
There are lots of things that you can do. Actually, I give you a lot of pointers, and Josh Freitas is always on call. We help people stay at home. We don't want you to stay at home too long, because we think the programming is important, but we certainly can help you with the pine scent and paint yellow, or if somebody's having a hard time coming out of that room, maybe you need to make the door on the back red, or if somebody's staying in bed, maybe you need to throw a black sheet on there. And we have ideas for everything, and they're scientifically based. So we certainly can help people. We have a lot of people at home that will be living with us eventually, and it's really has to be up to them as to when they want to do it. You really shouldn't push this unless you really know that person's alone and the family member's not there as much as they should be. And home care can be very expensive, but I would say they're our biggest competition. Home care is up and coming and it's working, and if they're bringing in some programming, but it just depends. It's very interesting. The whole business is very interesting because it is a business, but I think we're experts.
So you were talking about
Will help.
painting a door a different color. So for people who have no idea about Alzheimer's and dementia, talk about some of the behaviors and why, what is causing.
Well, if people don't want to get out of bed, and they just want to stay in bed and they start to get depressed and repressed, they will, like an LNA will come in and they'll say, you know what, let's get up, get ready, brush your teeth, and they'll follow somebody through all those activities, and then that person will turn and want to get back into bed. It's just automatic. They just got up to do you a favor. They're being nice. They're very compliant, or most of the time very compliant, especially in the morning, and they turn and look back at their bed, and if you've thrown a black sheet over that, they won't go near it. They just won't go near it. What they're seeing is like kind of maybe like a hole, or it's too dark, or they just automatically turn towards the door and they'll go out to the door. Now, if they are in their rooms and they don't want to come out for activities and things like that, painting the door red stimulates them out. So it just makes them want to go out and see what's outside. So it's all psychological. That's all.
And it's almost like the senses are working differently. Some of them are more heightened.
Yep.
So you use those.
Yeah. And you
in your
can't bet on
favor.
anything.
Right.
Yes, you use those in your favor, but it's like having children. You can't bet on anything. My mother used to say she always makes me a liar. But it's like, I do 10 things 10 times consistently, and then she'd say, go do it, and it would be in front of people, and I couldn't do it, and then I was like, she always does this to me. But that's what happens. You just have to go with the flow with people. You really just have to be kind. We have all this special training, and I think we have the highest level of training out of any community. We have arts and music therapy training, certified dementia practitioner training. That's all great. But a lot of people just naturally have good character and good manners. And that's what's really important with this generation. They want eye contact. They want their hand touched. They want to know you're really listening and you're waiting for them to form their sentence and get it back to you. You're not being impatient. So it's really just common courtesy and kindness. So those are our best people.
Yeah, I always say about Alzheimer's and dementia, the only thing predictable is that it's always going to be unpredictable.
Right.
So you just basically really have to be in the moment
Yeah.
with them and
And
take one thing at
small
a time.
things like a UTI, urinary tract infections, people get them. Somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia gets it, sometimes you would not believe the behavior. You would think something was really, really wrong, like maybe they should be somewhere other than this. Maybe they need to go to the hospital and get some help, when really it's just they need their medication. And for some reason, it throws them off balance, and it can be crazy behavior.
Well, and likewise, somebody who doesn't have dementia, who has a UTI, sometimes will be misdiagnosed
Yep.
with dementia if they're
Absolutely.
older.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they should be tested for a urinary tract infection.
Yep.
So
Yep.
good.
Well, we're going to have to take a break, but very interesting, and it affects so many people. It really does. And if anybody has any questions, you can give us a call right now. 1-866-823-1077 is our number. This is the Coach Carol Phillips segment of our program. We do it about twice a month, unless you're just too busy.
Or I'm sick and I have no voice, like 2 weeks ago.
And we're being joined today by Paula Whittier, who is the Sales and Marketing Director of the Arbors of Bedford. But she doesn't like that title. She likes to be known as a community resource.
Yes.
So that's what we'll refer to her as here on this program anyway. 38 is the time. It is our Coach Carol segment on Kale and Company from the Beacon Building today on this Tuesday afternoon here on The Pulse. Coach Carol Phillips is with us, and Paula Whittier from the Arbors of Bedford. She is the community resource.
Yep.
New title
Yes.
as of a half hour ago.
You can text her in the middle of the night, and
Yes, you can.
she's good with that. She's
Yep.
good with that. So, Carol, continue. You wanted to mention a Facebook post? Or,
Yeah, there was somebody was sharing a video on Facebook. There was, I can't remember what state it was in. There was a medical center who had this volunteer who was an older woman, and what had happened was a gentleman had come in, and she just started, calling him all kinds of names. She was very upset and belligerent, asking him to leave and saying some very odd things, and people were getting very, very upset with her and saying, she shouldn't be working there. She should be fired. People were confused, but a lot of negativity. And my first thought was she probably has Alzheimer's or dementia, and something triggered it because those are not normal behaviors. And so she probably needs, some testing done, somebody to come in and figure out how to help her.
Yep.
But that is, it shows that a lot of people need to be educated on some of these issues that the elderly deal with.
I think that's funny you say that, because I was going to mention to people, a lot of people don't know the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. They get so confused. And I understand it. And the only reason why I understand it is because I live in that world. Alzheimer is just the most common form of dementia. So it's the largest group of diagnosed dementia. So it's a dementia. It's just the biggest group of people have Alzheimer's, but there are so many different kinds. So, and there are some kinds that people just say really bad things, and they have no filter really quickly. And I think that was compassionate of you to think that way when everybody else was just judging.
Yeah, and it's really important to remember that because they can't control it. If they don't have any control over it. So the analogy that I like to say to people is, imagine if somebody couldn't walk and they were in a wheelchair. You wouldn't say to them, well, you just need to try harder. You need to get up and walk, and you're just not trying hard enough. Whereas with seniors, we tend to say, oh, come on, Mom, you remember. Don't you remember that person?
Yeah.
Think. And so it only hurts their self-confidence because they know the brain's just not answering the question for them.
They know something's wrong.
Right.
We treat them like they don't know that there's something wrong. And I think it's sad when people verbalize it and say, I know there's something wrong with me, but what's going on? And, it's just heartbreaking. So it's interesting.
Right. So tell us about, I'm going to change the subject here. Why so much lime green?
Oh, yes, I said that. We use lime green, and actually I think the company has patented it, or we're in the process of it now. So LCB Senior Living has all of their associates. So it's their programming people, their LNAs, their med techs, their RNs. Everybody wears lime green. It's the last color that people with cognitive decline can actually relate to and see. So we have a reading series, an LCB reading series. So you'll say, oh, mom hasn't read in, 2 years. She can't do that. She doesn't remember this, that, and the other thing. We make books for them. So if, say that mom loves Picasso, we'll make a great book on Picasso, and we'll do it in lime green large font. And for some reason, and Josh could probably tell you the exact reason because he's Josh, the lime green makes your eyes go left to right again, like when you read.
Interesting.
So some of the other colors don't do that. So people will pick up these books again and read. Will they remember everything? Maybe not, but they're enjoying reading again. So they'll find a quiet corner and sit and read, or we'll have a read out loud and share some of those different things, likes and interests of people from their books. So it's really neat.
Mm-hmm. And, speaking of that, another red flag is when they start to tell stories over and over and over again from years ago.
Right.
They can't remember, what day it is or what they had for lunch, but they can tell you every detail of when they were in middle school and their best friend.
That's the biggest part of children, the adult children being in denial. They'll say, come on, there's no way she has a memory issue. She remembers when I was 5 and I got gum in my hair. It's like, well, yeah, she remembers that. So it takes a little while for the adult child to remember that they have long-term memory, but they don't have the short-term memory.
Right. So they're losing their short-term memory. And what's interesting is some of them seem to lose it in chronological order backward.
Yes.
So
exactly.
They'll forget people who they haven't seen in a while. If they come visit, they won't remember their names or who they are. And then over time, they'll start forgetting their grandchildren's names, but they still remember their children.
Right.
So
I have a trick for that, because I think that when people have visitors, they get really nervous. Like, you can see the tension, like, who are these people coming towards me? They look familiar. I know they're here for me, but oh my God. So I always tell people, if a large group's coming, especially when there's a mix of ages, everybody wears a name tag, and you just say, oh my God, Mom, we just went to a birthday party. We still have our name tags on. Oh, just leave them on, you guys. So
Perfect.
Everybody kind of has that together before they go in, and they understand. And then it helps that person just at least use someone's name and feel more confident. So just remember, you're always preserving their emotional security. So anything you can do to make them feel better. It's almost like being just a very polite, gracious person. You always want the people in your presence to feel comfortable. So whatever you have to do to make them feel comfortable. So you don't want to, talk over them, or you don't want to seem, you want to just be at their level or try to help them feel good about themselves. That's just being polite.
Right, and giving them cues, walking them through what they might not remember.
Right.
And then just putting it into normal conversation. So it's as though you've always talked that way to mom, giving them hints instead of, I need to remind you, or
just like raising a child, isn't it? Because you don't want them to feel like you're talking down to them. You want them to feel happy and comfortable and secure, and like they're making their own decisions. The way you offer things to people, like, say mom loves orange juice, but you have 2 choices. So we'll say, do you want apple juice or orange juice? It will always be orange juice, because she likes it. And it's the second one that you offered. It's easier for her to remember and just take that. So, and if you put it forward a little bit, they'll grab that. So you know what they already like, but you're letting them make that decision. And they're getting what they want, which is really nice.
Right. That's so important.
Because that generation will basically just be compliant, especially women. They'll eat anything on their plate, and they maybe hated it,
Yeah, and on that topic, if you give them too many choices, it might get them agitated
two is enough.
or confused. And what people need to notice sometimes, if you give them too many choices and then they pick something, usually it's the last thing that you said.
Exactly.
Because it's the only thing that they remember.
Exactly.
And they're trying to maintain their dignity.
Their dignity.
But, as much as we want to try to help them and maintain their dignity, at some point, if they're upset and they need to talk about it, it's one of the populations where we don't often think to maybe get them some help or therapy, or kind of be the therapist as far as, well, if they are really upset and they're having a moment where it's like, I'm getting really bad. Like my mother, every now and then, she'd be really upset. And she wasn't one, to get really down, but she would say, Carol, I'm getting really bad. And I could tell it bothered her. So I would take a moment and let her talk about it.
Right.
Let her, say what's on her mind so she can get a break from trying to hide the fact that she's losing these abilities.
If you can
But-
take that time to listen. A lot of
Right.
people don't.
Right.
They talk at their loved one. Or
Exactly.
they ask a lot of questions because they're nervous. They don't know. They don't know what's coming next. They're afraid.
Right. So give them space to talk. But then I would say to her, you know what, Mom, I'm here for you and I will help you remember. I'll be your memory, so they feel like they do have somebody who's going to be there for them.
Yep.
It's hugely important. It's a very scary time for them.
I think you should do a training with adult children. Yeah, you're just naturally compassionate. That's kind. It's kind.
It's interesting because I went to a couple of support groups
Mm-hmm.
when I was taking care of my mom. And what I found was I was constantly helping everybody else.
Yeah.
Because they were, it's interesting because if you're further along in the journey, you want to help other people who are struggling. And likewise, it works both ways. And I remember going to a support group one time and there was a couple, they were trying to take care of their mother and the mother wasn't there. And they were saying that they were in this huge tug of war because the mother was becoming incontinent and they wanted to put the adult diapers,
Right.
the Depends or whatever different places call them, on her. And she was fighting because her dignity, was getting in the way. And of course, her brain didn't think that she needed it.
Right.
And so I talked to them about how you can, do different steps along the way. Like, especially if it's a woman, buy her some pads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so that she feels like that's something that's familiar to her and
Right.
she's not in feeling like, well, you're treating me like a child, putting me in a diaper.
Right.
So think outside the box and figure out, okay, what steps can we take in between so that they
And
maintain
everybody's
their
different.
dignity?
Everybody's different. So you can't let the community or the nurses guide you that way. You can say, you know what, I think my mother would be more comfortable with this. Well, no, this is what we do. Well, no, actually, I think she'll be more comfortable with this and I want to try this. So you always have that last word. Don't ever feel like you don't. And I think a lot of people will back down to anybody that's in charge. Well, you have to remember, I always say, the residents keep food on our tables. So, and this is their life. So we need to help them enjoy their day. We're just here to work. We get to go home and do whatever we want. We sometimes get to do really nice things like go on vacations and that because they're here and they're allowing us to take care of them. So that's really important to know that as an adult child or a sibling or whoever has placed their loved one, you're in charge.
Very interesting and informative hour with Coach Carol Phillips and Paula Whittier from the Arbors at Bedford. And unfortunately, we have to wrap things up. But Carol, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, Paula, let the listeners know how to get in touch with you and the Arbors.
Sure. You can call me anytime during business hours at 603-647-9300. You can learn more. I'll give you my cell number when you call me at work. I don't want everybody calling my cell. You can go online and go to www.arborsofbedford.com and get information. Even our costs are there, which is really nice. I think there's only one other company that does that. We want you to know what we're all about. We want you to call and ask questions. You can email me through Contact Us through that as well. But you'll be able to reach me. You'll find me, and I'll be there for you. So when you call, you can expect to be called back within the hour if you don't reach me directly. So
Well, thank you so much. And,
you.
I want to remind everybody that if you're dealing with this situation, it takes a village. It really takes a village. So, find those resources so that you can get help along the way. But thank you so much for being with us, Paula,
thank you
today.
very
Great
much for having
information.
me. Thank you.
Yeah, it has been a terrific
Thanks,
hour.
Ken.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Coach Carol.
You're welcome.
For another great hour. I was able to relax and just soak in all this information.
There you go.
There you go.
Hopefully you won't need it.
Well, I think I'm already beyond that point. But